during the quiet hours of your life, there will come a time when everything you've constructed within yourself will start to shake. You're not shaking because the world is shaking around you. Rather, you're shaking because something deeper within you is no longer willing to pretend. In the silence, in the still, restless nights, and in the mornings when your face in the mirror feels like a stranger, that moment does not arrive with fireworks or celebration. Rather, it arrives in the stillness. The day continues as you normally would, but something has changed. The words that people say to you reverberate through you as if they were made of glass. There is no flavor in the food, your name no longer suits, and you are unable to explain it to anyone other than yourself because everything appears to be the same on the outside. On the other hand, you have the impression that you are observing your life through a window that is closed and will not open. Something is passing away. You're unable to identify it at this time. Depression is not the same thing as this. This is not a phase. This is the beginning of the death of the ego, and it is the most holy and terrible threshold that a human soul will ever have to cross in its lifetime. Carl Jung did not refer to this stage as enlightenment. Rather, he referred to it as disintegration, which is the collapse of who you currently believe you are. It is not enough to say that the ego is merely hubris or conceit. Rather, it is the complete framework of one's identity. These are the stories you've told yourself in order to live, to belong, to be loved, and to be important. It is the sum total of those stories. The polished mask that you present to the public is what it is the voice that is already present in your head, telling you what you ought to want, what you ought to dread, and what you ought to never express out loud. For such a long time, you have been wearing your ego like a costume that you have mistaken it for your own skin. And as it begins to peel, you don't feel liberated. You feel afraid because beneath it is an emptiness, a space you've avoided your whole life, a silence that sounds like crazy, a question that has no answer. If I am not this, then who am I? This is the point at which the majority of individuals flee. They keep themselves from sitting still for long enough to hear the collapsing by drowning it in noise, in work, in relationships, in entertainment, in narcotics, or anything else that can prevent them from sitting still. On the other hand, there are those people who are unable to flee. They sense the draw into the abyss, and against their instincts, they give into it. Not because it offers calm, but because it brings truth. Surrender is the beginning of everything. Therefore, it is the beginning of everything. And this is the first truth. The person you have considered yourself to be, the one who sought success, who dreaded rejection, and who needed approval. That person was never actually there. In a world that taught you that love must be earned, that person that you built was an image that you created in order to earn love. That individual was a stronghold that was constructed around your fear, and now the walls are beginning to crack. It is not a sudden collapse. Rather, it is a gradual process that unfolds in stages. To begin, you start to have doubts about your core beliefs. What was once considered significant is now beginning to feel empty. It seems as though the dreams you chased were borrowed. As time goes on, the relationships that you once held dear start to feel contingent. It dawns on you that a significant portion of your existence was not molded by your soul, but rather by your ability to survive. It seems as though every mask, every habit, and every opinion belongs to someone else, and you find yourself becoming fatigued not as a result of doing too much, but rather as a result of lugging a self that is no longer appropriate causes the dissonance to increase. When you are at work, at home, or going about your daily routines, you start to feel as though you are a ghost. While you are present, you are not there. You start to feel grief, not because someone has passed away, but rather because you're coming to the realization that the person you believed you were never actually lived. Not only is this grief not typical, but it is also not loud. In the presence of other people, it does not cry. As if it were a stone, it exists within your chest. Your sleep is disrupted in the middle of the night by it. Every time you make another attempt to act as if nothing is wrong, it squeezes your ribs and wraps around them like a serpent. You're compelled to slow down, to break down, and to finally sit in the ashes as a result of them. And it is precisely in this excruciating quiet that you start to feel something ancient stirring inside you. It is a type of remembrance, a gentle voice that does not speak in words, but rather in feels. Something that is beneath thinking and beneath feeling, something that you have always understood, but have never been able to express. It states, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of your return. However, in order to get back to who you are, you must first let go of everything that isn't genuinely yours." In addition, this is the death of the ego that no one discusses. It is not a worthy occurrence. It is a mess, it is raw, and it has the feeling of being a failure. It is possible that you will lose your friends, not because you do not love them, but because you're unable to lie in order to maintain your friendships. There is a possibility that you will quit your job, not because you are a slacker, but because your spirit can no longer deal with pretending. It is possible that you will withdraw from your family, not because you are angry, but because you require distance in order to heal. And despite everything that has happened, you continue to have doubts about yourself. You are unsure whether you're having a mental breakdown or whether you're going insane. However, you are not. You have begun to awaken. In this method, you are removing everything that is false. You are destroying the house that you have constructed for yourself in order to make room for something genuine to emerge from the ashes. It was stated by Jung that individuals will do anything in order to avoid confronting their own essence. How come? Because it necessitates the disappearance of the person they have been pretending to be. Mostly due to the fact that it requires them to stop blaming the world and start beginning to question the image that they see in reflection. Mostly due to the fact that it is far simpler to remain distracted than it is to accept that you have been hiding it your entire life. On the other hand, there is no turning back for those who have been charged with awakening. The moment the ego starts to die, its grasp on you begins to weaken, and as this loosening occurs, you start to feel something that is both scary and beautiful. The realization that you are not your tail, that you're not your trauma, that you're not your thoughts, your emotions, or your worries. What you are is the consciousness that lies behind them, the observer and the silent witness that has been present throughout each and every iteration of yourself. It is currently attempting to make itself known. Nevertheless, coming to terms with that reality is not liberty. Rather, it is disorientation. You don't get a sense of freedom. Rather, you have a sense of being disoriented and unmoored, much like a ship that is sailing without a compass. It is no longer possible to use the previous map, and the new one has not yet been drawn. This vacuum, the space between selves, the darkness that exists between death and rebirth, is what we are referring to. And it is essential because it cleanses you, and it prepares you to be reborn, not as someone different, but as the person you were before the world taught you who you should be. This is the point at which the journey starts. As scary as it may feel, there is a greater truth that is pulsing beneath the surface of the questioning of the quiet disintegration of the ego. You are not dying. You are finally being born. As soon as the ego starts to disintegrate, the truth that is underlying it begins to surface, and it does so not with elegance, but with force. There is no gentleness in its emergence. When it does arrive, it is not like sunlight after a storm. Rather, it is more like a flood rising from the deepest recesses of your unconscious, crashing through the holes in your identity and washing away every illusion that you have clung to. The flood brings with it the shadow, the dark twin of your personality, which consists of the aspects of yourself that you have been taught to conceal, reject, and repress. These include anger, lust, envy, grief, fear, contempt, power, and vulnerability. Everything that has ever been thought excessive, ugly, or dangerous by others around you, as well as everything that you have disowned in order to be accepted, is what is waiting beneath the mask, and it has been waiting for a very long time. Carl Jung never considered the shadow to be a malevolent force. Rather, he regarded it as a repressed truth, a potential, and a soul that had been banished in order to ensure the survival of the ego. And now that the ego is passing away, the shadow is coming back, not to destroy you, but to be acknowledged, to be felt, and to be absorbed. On the other hand, this is without a doubt the most scary part of the awakening, since the darkness does not knock. Rather, it breaks in. It takes control of your thoughts. It influences your dreams, and it reveals everything that you have projected onto other people, every judgment that you have made, and every characteristic that you have detested in another person. There's a sudden transformation of the environment into a mirror as it reflects things back at you. Each and every dispute serves as a message, and each and every trigger serves as a teacher. You begin to see your life not as a victim of other people, but rather as a canvas painted by your unconscious. And this understanding shatters you all over again, because you realize that your misery was never only imposed by the world for the first time. A significant portion of it originated from within, from the aspects of yourself that you attempted to stifle. The child who was never permitted to be angry, the lady who was told to be little, and the man who was chastised for displaying vulnerability. Not only are these components part of your feelings, but they are also pieces of your being. It is as if you have finally come face to face with yourself after a lifetime of being apart from them, when you finally see them clearly for the first time. While it is overpowering, it is sacred, it is excruciatingly intimate, and it is very important. It is also impossible to avoid. Nevertheless, the risk resides in the fact that you can mistake the shadow for your own identity. As soon as it comes to the surface, it feels as though the only thing you are is suffering, shame, and darkness. Feeling toxic, unlovable, and flawed beyond repair is how you feel. On the other hand, this is not the case. This is not who you are. This is the person you have become in order to safeguard the person you truly are. You should not consider the shadow to be your adversary. Rather, it is your guardian, a wounded guardian who came to your aid when the world informed you that it was unsafe to be whole. And now, when you come to, it hands you everything that you buried under the ground. "I kept this for you," it says on the label. Would you like to experience it right now? You are required to do so, since the only way to achieve integration is through embodiment. You cannot solve this problem by thinking your way through it. You must go deeper into your body. You put your heart into the memories that you said you would never go back to. This decline is not a spiritual concept. Rather, it is an experience that one has while living. You start to recall things that you had before believed to be forgotten. Being silenced, rejected, and abandoned is a painful experience that you revisit. There are times when you feel fury, tears, and trembling. And during such times, you are not regressing. Rather, you are mending. You are breathing life into what was buried and giving voice to what was previously silenced. In addition, you are able to retrieve a portion of your strength each time you let a portion of your shadow to be experienced without passing judgment on it. Not the strength of the ego, but the power of the mind. The kind of power that results from totality, from the fact that one no longer needs to conceal anything. However, this kind of process is not supported by society. The world encourages you to maintain a positive attitude, to simply move on, and to be courageous. As a result, shadow work turns into a solitary journey, a war that is conducted in secret and in silence. There's a possibility that you may find yourself withdrawing from the world, from friends who do not comprehend, from lovers who recognized only your mask, and from roles that are no longer appropriate for you. There is no such thing as a punishment for this solitude. Rather, it is a chrysalis, a sacred space where the old self disintegrates and the new self gives birth. In addition to being painful and unsettling, it is also holy, and it cannot be hurried through. This is due to the fact that the shadow is not a checklist, and is not something that can be achieved by a weekend retreat. It is a discussion between your conscious self and the depths of your unconscious, and it is a connection that should last a lifetime. At the same moment that you believe you have successfully incorporated it, it shows still another layer, yet another wound, yet another truth. According to Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. This is the reason why the majority of individuals never make it this far in their career. In order to avoid feeling the shadow, they try to distract themselves, numb themselves, spiritualize it, bypass it, intellectualize it, and do everything else that prevents them from experiencing it. You, on the other hand, have made a different decision if you are still being present. Everything is different today because you have made the decision to see, to feel, and to know. Mostly due to the fact that once you confront your own darkness, you start to perceive the shadow in other people, not as a threat, but rather as a reflection. The rebellious guy is a little boy who is never shielded from harm. The woman who is manipulative is a young lady who discovered that love cannot be unconditional. The icy parent is a spirit that has never experienced the feeling of being safe. You do not pass judgment. Rather, you begin to comprehend. You begin to love others from a depth that they have never experienced before. And this is the place where compassion is born. Compassion is not born from striving to be good. Rather, it is born from being honest, from understanding darkness, and being willing to choose love anyway. To be clear, however, integration is not the same thing as perfection. There is no such thing as becoming a perfect, enlightened being. Rather, it is being whole. That entails taking responsibility for your inconsistencies, your dualities, and your humanity. The ability to be both ferocious and soft, wise and wounded, and both light and shadow are all within your reach. If you quit striving to be nice and instead focus on attempting to be full, you will experience a remarkable transformation. You will become free. Released from the confines of self-denial, liberated from the roles that suffocated you, and liberated from the humiliation that put you on the periphery of society. You're no longer required to demonstrate your worth, and you no longer need to be loved. It is not necessary for you to be anything other than genuine, and that genuineness has a magnetic effect. In doing so, it reawakens others and grants them the permission to be entire as well. In this way, the shadow is revealed, not through its eradication, but by its incorporation, not through its denial, but through its incorporation. During this process of inclusion, your soul will grow, your heart will become more profound, and your presence will become a safe haven for other people. Because you are healing and not trying to hide it, rather than because you have already been healed. To put it another way, this is the distinction between presence and performance, between ego and essence, and between the false self and the real self. During the course of your spiritual awakening, you will reach a point where even the pain begins to lessen. However, this is not because you have healed, not because the darkness has lifted, and most certainly not because you have figured out what caused the anguish. Due to the fact that everything has been still, the discomfort is lessened. There is no joy or peace. There is only stillness. It is a dreadful quiet, a hollow echo in the place where your identity used to be standing. Despite the fact that the previous version of you, including the mask, the ego, and the roles, has fallen apart, the new version has not yet come. You are not anyone you used to be, but you are not yet the person you are becoming into. Carl Jung referred to this region as the tension of the opposites. It is the emptiness, the liminal space, and the gap between the two. While you were unwinding, you felt something, whether it was sadness, wrath, sorrow, or despair. No one warns you that this space is the most difficult part of all, since at least you felt something. Now, however, you have no feelings at all. You are merely a numb, weightless drifting through a life that no longer fits you. After waking up, you find yourself wondering what the point of anything is. You go through the motions of eating, working, and talking, yet each of these activities still feels empty. The condition is not depression, nor is it apathy. What is happening is that the soul is purging itself of everything that is not real. You make an effort to maintain meaning, yet the meaning dissipates despite your efforts. The beliefs that you formerly considered to be sacrosanct no longer bother you. The dreams that you actively pursued appear to be illusory. The individuals you have surrounded yourself with appear to be far away and unapproachable. Something dreadful becomes apparent to you in this immense inner silence, and that is the fact that you are alone. Being alone is not the same thing as being lonely. By yourself with your thoughts, by yourself with your body, and by yourself with a question that has no answer. What am I right now? The answer to this issue cannot be found in words, nor can it be found by the application of reasoning. Life is the only way to experience it. This is the sacred pause, the death before rebirth. And it seems like you're floating in the dark with your arms held out, hoping for anything to touch you. But there is no response, and that is precisely the point. Mostly due to the fact that if someone came to help you, it would only become another mask, another identity, and another diversion from the rawness of the moment. The void is not here to punish you. Rather, it is here to purify you, to rid you of every false ego, every grasping desire, and every unconscious pattern that would attempt to lure you back into the old world. During this process of purification, something age-old is taking place, something that is beyond the capacity of the intellect to fathom. The preparation that is being done for you is tough, but it is being done. Your sanity starts to be called into doubt. What is the best way to communicate this to someone? You are unable to. The majority of people would not comprehend. They tell you to calm down, to obtain some assistance, and to concentrate on the. Although they are optimistic, they fail to recognize the fact that you are not broken. Rather, you are becoming complete. It is not that you are falling apart. Rather, you are plunging inward, into your center, into the silent core of your being, where nothing needs to be stated and nothing can be falsified. As time goes on, you start to see through everything, including the performance in society, the masks that other people wear, and the games that people play in order to feel important, to feel secure, and to feel superior. Moreover, you're no longer moved by any of it. Not only do you not feel furious, but you also do not feel superior to them. It's as if you've finished. There is a requirement for this disconnection. Despite the fact that you are not intended to remain in this state for an infinite amount of time, you're compelled to go through it, since it is only in the void that something genuine can develop. It is impossible for the soul to communicate when the ego is yelling. The fact that you are still dancing to the rhythm of validation prevents it from moving, so it waits patiently and quietly until you are quiet enough to hear it. And when you eventually stop begging for clarity, when you stop battling the nothingness, when you finally stop asking for the anguish to end, then is when it comes to you. Rather than with a commotion or a display of pyrotechnics, it was with a whisper, a hushed voice that does not originate from the heavens, but rather from within. It is not a voice that is whispering. Rather, it is a knowing, a sense that is sensed, and a presence. One does not hear it. Rather, one remembers it. And the thing that you will always remember is that you have always been more than your tale, more than your anguish, more than your desires, more than your failures, and more than your heritage. Awareness is what you are. As the space that contains the chaos, you are the space. As a witness, you are present for every moment of collapse, every moment of breakthrough, and every minute of silence in between. For the entirety of your existence, you have been identifying with the contents of your awareness, including your ideas, your feelings, and your identity. Now, however, you are beginning to identify with consciousness itself, and this shift results in a complete transformation of everything. You will no longer be afraid of the void after you have gained an understanding of yourself as awareness. Your fear of the collapse has been eliminated. You're no longer afraid of keeping quiet. In point of fact, you start to want for it, not because you want to get away from the world, but rather because you want to confront it from a place of knowing the truth. Life is not made simpler by this reality. Rather, it is made more genuine by it. In addition, the real world is dirty, it is unfiltered, and it is replete with inconsistencies and paradoxes. Nevertheless, it is yours. It is not borrowed. It is not inherited, and it is not forced. It is chosen. And something begins to stir from this emptiness and this silence. It is a desire, but it is not the kind of desire you have had before. It is not a desire for success, approval, or pleasure. Rather, it is a more profound yearning, a yearning to create, to serve, to speak the truth, to live one's life to the fullest, and to walk in accord with what one now knows cannot be turned away from. The soul is calling you home, not to the life you had, but to the life that was always destined for you. This longing is why you feel the need to return home. A life that is not ruled by fear, but rather inspired by the truth that is inside. A life that is not driven by ego, but rather by essence. It is necessary, however, that you let go of the impulse to define that life before you can actually live it. It is imperative that you let go of every one of your blueprints, timelines, and expectations, because the life that is on the horizon is not constructed by you. Rather, it is constructed through you. And for it to take place, you must continue to be devoid of anything. You must continue to be surrendered. In the emptiness for a sufficient amount of time for the previous frequency to pass away and the new one to establish itself throughout your bones. The pause that comes between is holy. Not only is it not a failure, but it is also not a delay. It is the chrysalis, the cocoon, the holy pause that comes before the wings are spread. You are correct. It is painful, it is alone, and it is excruciatingly slow. Have faith in this, however. There is nothing incorrect and nothing is lacking. You are precisely where you should be at this moment. Neither are you falling behind, nor are you broken. The seed of your being is currently being held in the silence that you are currently experiencing, and from that seed, a new life will emerge. Because you did not pursue it, but rather because you allowed it to happen. The reason for this is that you lost all that was untrue, and as a result, you were open to everything that was true. Immediately following the pause, there's a barely audible stirring of something else. It does not yell or demand anything. Rather, it silently hums through your chest, through your bones, and through your breath when you are breathing. You are no longer in a state of collapse. Nevertheless, you are not yet in a state of flight. At this point, you are in the process of reintegrating yourself into society, which is when the actual work begins. Mostly due to the fact that awakening is one thing, but really living woke is a completely different thing. Having an experience is the first step, and practicing is the second step. In contrast to understanding, practice necessitates a state of devotion. To accomplish this, you must repeatedly present yourself to yourself rather than to the outside world. Due to the fact that there is no longer a character to conceal oneself behind, no ego to defend oneself, and no illusion to justify one's patterns. Truth is the only thing that exists, and once it has been seen, it cannot be hidden. It is going to follow you into every connection, every decision, and every conversation you might have. Instead of acting based on performance, it will require you to act from alignment. In addition, the costs of acting from alignment are significantly more than you could have ever imagined. You come to the realization that a significant portion of what you earlier saw to be love was, in reality, fear disguised as dependency. That many of your aspirations were not founded on a sense of purpose, but rather on the desire to make up for your lack of worthiness. Your recovery process was sometimes a distraction from fully feeling these truths, and that was something you had to deal with. They are painful. They bring down even more of the subtle ego structures that have remained concealed in your spiritual picture. Since it is true that the ego will make an effort to reconstruct itself using the language of waking. The message reads, I am conscious. I am high vibrational. I only allow energies that are aligned with mine. However, this is still a mask, albeit a more enlightened costume, but it is still a costume nonetheless. The true integration eliminates even that possibility. You are brought back to the unfiltered, truthful, grounded, and inconvenient version of yourself. The self that continues to bleed, the self that continues to fail, and the self that continues to want to leave but stays nonetheless. And it is through this abiding that you start to comprehend what awakening really is, a sacred rebellion, not against the world, but against the falseness that is within yourself. You are defying the assumption that your value is contingent on external factors. You are against the voice in your head that tells you that in order to be loved, you need to be flawless. Defying the notion that healing is a destination that you must arrive at, you rebel against the idea. It is not to better yourself that you begin to live. Rather, it is to express yourself, to become the embodiment of the truth that you have discovered. Additionally, its manifestation is not always graceful, nor is it always clean. Sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, it appears to be tears, and other times it appears to be walking. There are moments when removing yourself from everything that is familiar might feel like establishing boundaries that are so strong that they shake your entire nervous system. The reason you do it, however, is not because you are fearless, but rather because your fear is no longer guiding you. You begin to experience things in a different way. Even if you don't speak as much, the words that you do say carry a lot of weight. Instead of caring more about being understood, you are more concerned with being truthful. Not because you're a good person, but because you no longer want to be the one to carry the poison. You forgive. You do not triumph over suffering. Rather, you go through it. As a result of going through it, you become feeble, not feeble. You become feeble, open, and available. Your body is no longer a battlefield. Rather, it transforms into a temple, a compass, and a place of residence. As you listen, you hear its mutterings. You sleep when it wants you to, you eat when it makes you hungry, and you cry when it needs to let go of something. You refrain from forcing others and instead begin to follow, not blindly, but with intuition. As a result of this listening, you discover that you can trust yourself once more, not the outside world or other people. This trust will serve as your guide, and you will gradually start to re-enter life. Not the life you had before, but a new one that is reflective of your inner truth. If you're looking for significance in your life, rather than financial gain, you should consider switching occupations. If you're looking for depth, rather than comfort, you might seek out new partnerships. Depending on the inner upheaval, you might decide to relocate, retreat, or reshape every part of the exterior. Not escapism, but congruence, alignment, and embodiment are what we are experiencing here. It is no longer the case that you are living from the outside in. Rather, you're living from the inside out. And each and every action that is carried out from this location feels incredibly alive. There are no assurances or safety nets involved in this situation. Nonetheless, there's freedom. The duty that comes along with that freedom is not to be perfect, but rather to be there, to meet each moment without a script, and to show up without a mask covering your face. However, this new version of you is not always welcomed by the entirety of the world. You could be perceived as being cold, aloof, arrogant, and self-centered. This is due to the fact that people long for the previous version of you, the one who was agreeable, accommodating, and who made them feel at ease. But you're no longer there. You suffered a loss. You laid it to rest. Now is the time for you to make the decision to prioritize truth over approval, not as a philosophy, but as a way of life. When you really mean to say no, you stop saying yes. In an effort to avoid controversy, you cease shrinking. It is inevitable that people will leave if you cease explaining your value. Allow them to stay, because the people who remain are the ones who see you in your true form. They're the ones who have been through their own fire, and they're the ones who do not require you to be little in order to feel comfortable. Although they are uncommon, these new connections are the real deal. You are nourished by them, you are challenged by them, and they reflect your development. The language of depth, resonance, and presence is the language that you speak now. You speak a new language, not by what they say, but by the way they conduct their lives. You are able to detect it in other people. Those individuals who have traversed the vacuum possess a gentle dignity that is unassuming. There is no stance on their part, and they do not seek attention. They exude an inner calmness, a genuineness that is rooted in reality, and they do not require any explanation. These are the folks you have. You may be a small number, but you are sufficient. The most lovely aspect of this is that you start to provide this presence to other people, not with the intention of fixing them, but rather to hold them. No longer do you have to be the one who saves, the one who teaches, or the one who is smart. You are simply a reflection, a place, and a soul that has endured their own disintegration and come back with nothing but the truth. And this is the truth. Wholeness is not found in perfection. Rather, it is found in integration, in the holy, messy, wonderful act of saying yes to all of you, shadow and light, grief and joy, wrath and tenderness, power and softness. This is the truth. The soul does not seek to transcend the human experience. Rather, it seeks to fully inhabit the human experience altogether. This is integration. It is not the conclusion of your journey. Rather, it is the beginning of a new manner of walking it, with your eyes open, your heart undefended, your feet on the ground, and a fire in your breast. You are no longer looking for awakening. Rather, you are waking in every breath, in every choice, and in every ordinary moment in which you choose truth over illusion, love over fear, and completeness over perfection. I am not referring to a dream, a fantasy, or a spiritual concept when I say that this is not a dream. It is a revolution that needs to be lived and embodied, and it starts from within you. When you have finally confronted the shadow, when you have burned down your ego, and when you have survived the stillness, you will emerge not as a perfect being, but rather as a more profound human being. When it comes to the manner that they present it in books, you are not enlightened. The clouds are not hovering above you, and you are not beyond the realm of this earth. It is not in your head. Rather, it is in your bones that you are more engaged than you have ever been before. You are raw, real, grounded, and alert. It is not possible to have a profound realization or a conclusive revelation that conveys the significance of everything. Not only is there a peaceful understanding, but there is also a deeper breath, a softer heart, and a clarity that does not shout but never leaves. To follow the pathless path is to experience the becoming that never comes to an end, the spiral that continues inward, layer by layer, truth by truth. This is what it is to move forward. Because awakening was never a destination. Rather, it was an invitation to live differently, to love more deeply, to die to what is false, and to be reborn to what is real over and over again. As you can see now, life will never end the process of introducing you. Each and every moment is a mirror. Each and every person is a reflection, and each and every trigger is a doorway. It is impossible to reach a point of graduation or a plateau where one stops learning, stops faltering, or stops feeling. At this point, however, you're not meeting these surges with opposition, but rather with reverence. Even the agony, the mistrust, and the parts of you that still shake when the old stories come knocking are welcomed by you. You welcome anything that comes your way, because you now see that they are not here to punish you. Rather, they are here to deepen you, to refine your truth, and to ask you, would you choose authenticity once more, even here? In spite of everything, are you going to be true to yourself? You do this not because you have overcome your fear, but rather because you no longer believe in giving up on yourself by giving up on yourself. Because you have experienced the pain that comes from a betrayal of the soul and seen what it costs you, you have decided that you will no longer do it. Not for love, not for approval, and not even for a sense of belonging among people. Mainly due to the fact that the sacred act of belonging to oneself is where true belonging can be found. And as soon as you do, everything will be different. You move more slowly, you speak with some care, and you stop looking for something and begin to notice it. The environment shifts from being a battlefield to being more of a school, and from being a test to being more of a mirror along this process. If you have faith in time, there is no need to exert any kind of pressure. When you go through cycles, you put your faith in the knowledge that tells you, now is enough. You become less reactive and more contemplative of your actions. Instead of letting them go with resentment, you let them go with grace. You have room for your own personal development. The boundaries you set for yourself become your prayers. You allow complete silence to serve as your safe haven. Rather than pushing toward the next level of achievement, you begin to appreciate the marvel that is your breath. Sovereignty is not the same thing as complacency in this case. The realization that your value is never determined by how much you produce, how much you prove, or how much you please others was a significant realization. You are valuable because of who you are, because you are present, and because you're willing to sit with the mess and come to terms with it with compassion. Despite the fact that you may still cry and fall, you are now able to rise without feeling ashamed. Repairs are made without any repercussions. You are free from any feelings of guilt. You make love not to experience a sense of sufficiency, but rather to communicate the sufficiency that is already there inside you. You give up on your attempts to be spiritual and instead begin to be entirely human, fully present, and fully immersed. You do not avoid discomfort. Rather, you choose to bless it. You're not trying to get away from the body. Rather, you are digging deeper into it. Emotion does not escape you. Rather, you create a secure environment in which it can settle. However, this is not theory. Rather, it is practice. Picking presence above performance on a daily, hourly, and moment-to-moment basis instead. The way the sun touches the floor in the morning, the sound of your breath when the world is quiet, and the way your heart softens when you tell the truth, even when your voice shakes, are all things that you notice when you are in this presence. Now that you are able to feel it in your cells and in your soul, you begin to see what the mystics meant when they stated that the ordinary is the doorway to the sacred. Sacredness is not something that can be discovered. Rather, it is something that is recalled. When you look into someone's eyes and actually see them and let them see you, it is not in some faraway place. It is in the way that you hold a friend's hand, in the way that you say, "I'm sorry," with your entire chest, and in the manner that you say it. This is what it means to live awake. As opposed to living above the world, one lives inside it. The absence of sorrow is not the same as the absence of illusion. Though not immune to suffering, rooted in a sense of purpose, you no longer search for signs. Rather, you become one of them. You no longer want to pursue love. Rather, you become it. You no longer wait for someone to save you. Instead, you become the one who refuses to abandon yourself over and over again, even on the difficult days, even in the dark, especially in the dark. Because the darkness no longer frightens you, but rather beckons you to come in. You're no longer fighting the darkness. Rather, you're dancing with it. It whispers, "There's more truth, more depth, more light that only reveals itself when everything else fades." You pay attention, you gain knowledge, and you allow it to teach you something that the light could never teach you. That you are complete not because you are flawless, but because you are honest, because you are here, and because you continue to show up even when it is difficult, even when it hurts, especially when it is difficult. You have a better understanding of what Carl Jung meant when he remarked, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are today." You have this understanding. There's no such thing as a straight line, a brand, or an identity. Becoming is not a straight line. It is a love letter, a journey without a map, and a pathless blossoming all at the same time. The process of remembering, forgetting, and remembering again is essential to your own personal development. When all that is known to you disappears, it is believing in yourself, being able to stand in the flames of the truth, and making the decision to not flee. Not only when you are wise, but also when you are lost. Not just when you are light, but when you are dark. Not just when you are powerful, but when you are tender. This is what it means to love yourself. The true awakening is not a destination, but rather a devotion, a daily return, 1,000 deaths and 1,000 rebirths. This is the awakening that is truly happening. And through it all, a spirit that, even in its most calm moments, glows with the fire of what is genuine, a soul that refuses to give up, a heart that refuses to harden, and a spirit that refuses to harden. No, you're not who you used to be, and you're not going to be who you will be in the future. Now, in this very moment of becoming, you are who you are, and that is the final truth.